welcome back to another episode of Planet Hunters Coffee Chat. I'm your host, Cassie Prolongo, and of course, joining me as always is the lovely Nora Eisner. Hey, Nora.
Hi, Cassie. How are you?
Very well, thank you. A little bit of a drip this morning, so I decided to make a lovely tea, and I got this tea in Italy. So it's biscotti and chocolate tea, so that should clear up whatever allergies I have this morning
That
going on.
sounds so good. I am very jealous.
It's quite seasonal and very nice. What do you have for today?
I just have a standard British tea. Um,
Love it. I would always take my British, not to get off the topic and talk about tea. I would always take my tea with a little bit of milk. I was told when I lived in the UK that if I had sugar, that I was an imposter.
oh,
So,
yeah. You have to have a little bit of milk. I actually
yeah.
like quite a lot of milk in my tea.
Yeah.
I'm always told off that I have too much milk in my tea. But yeah, sugar's a no-go.
So thank you for joining us on our coffee chat and tea episode for today. We're not going to talk about science. No, I'm just kidding. Of course, we're going to talk about science. In fact, today we're going to answer a question that one of our participants sent to us, and I'm going to paraphrase it very quickly. This citizen scientist asked about using odd-even transits or periods to identify false positives and said, is it possible for us to do a video about it? So yes, we are going to do a video about it. You may remember or recall in some of our past episodes that we have actually gone into false positives, but this episode for today, Nora is going to go over this specifically, and we're going to drill it down a little bit more in depth, and we hope that it's of use to you guys. So, Nora, let's get started. Odd-even transits, determining false positives. I think this is a pretty popular thing with citizen scientists, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really important to rule out false positives. So I'm really glad that there's so much interest in it. So we have mentioned, as you said, we have mentioned these odd and even transits a couple of times now, but I keep mentioning them and I'm not actually sure I've ever explained them. So this is a good time to do that. So to talk about the odd and even transits, we're going to start off with not the planet scenario, but we're going to start off with the eclipsing binary scenario. So brief reminder, eclipsing binary is where instead of having a planet orbiting around a star, you have a star orbiting around another star. So two stars kind of orbiting around one another, where I'm just moving my fist around. Each fist in this example here, my little hand gesture is a star.
No prop for today. No prop that she grabbed for today. If you remember one of our other transiting episodes, we had, what was it, the tennis ball going around the lamp?
Well, to be fair, that was when I was looking after a dog. So I had tennis balls around the house and I'm currently not looking after a dog. So if you want illustrations, you have to give me a puppy.
Right. Put it on the list for next Christmas, Nora. All right. Okay. Sorry for the deviation. Go ahead and continue. Sorry.
Okay, cool. So if we have two stars going around one another, both stars are bright, and we imagine those stars are probably not, I mean, they can be the same size, but they don't have to be the same size. So in this illustration that we can see on the screen here, we have two stars of two different sizes. And in scenario A, we have them kind of side by side in their orbits. We can see the full light from both of those stars. So we have kind of the maximum brightness that we can get. Now, when that blue star eclipses in front of that orange star that we have there, so the smaller star going in front of the bigger star, the smaller star is blocking out some of the light from the bigger star, but we do still see the light from the blue star. So we get a small eclipse, or smaller than the one we're about to also talk about. It then keeps moving around. That blue is again on the kind of side to side with the orange one. We see light from both of them. We have the maximum brightness again. And when that blue star then goes behind the red star, so when the little star goes behind, sorry, not red, orange star, behind the big star, then we only see light from the big star and we see no light from the little star. So that gives us a deep eclipse. So the difference between kind of the scenario, we'll call it, if we label them A, B, C, D, if we kind of the difference between scenario B and scenario D is that in scenario B, we have light from both stars. We have light from that blue star and light from that orange star, but some of the orange star's light is blocked, so we have a shallower eclipse. And on the far right, in the last scenario there, we only have the light from the bigger star. So that is a deeper eclipse because we've blocked out the light from the other star entirely. So if we get to the end of this scenario, this sequence of events that have happened, these eclipses will continue to repeat. So you always have one smaller dip followed by one larger dip, and then a smaller dip again, and then a larger dip, and so on. So if we label these dips, kind of, if we not label them, if we number them, if we have 1, 2, 3, 4, then the odd numbered dips and the even numbered dips are different depths. In this case, the 1, 3, 5 would be shallower, and the 2, 4, 6, 8 would be deeper. So the odd and even transit depths would be different. So that's the scenario for a eclipsing binary, 2 stars. Small caveat. If those 2 stars are exactly the same size, or exactly the same, maybe not size, but exactly the same brightness, then the odd and even transits would also be the same depth. But if let's assume that for eclipsing binaries, if they are different types of stars, you have an odd kind of depth and an even transit depth. Now, in the planet scenario, we have we have the star and we have a planet going around it, but a planet gives off no light. So a planet is very dark. So we don't see any, if you imagine now that this blue thing is a planet not giving off any light, then if that planet is behind the star or to the side of the star, it doesn't make a difference. We don't see any light from it anyway at any time. The only time we see a difference in the brightness of the system that we're looking at is when that planet is in front of the star.
Right.
So we only ever see it, kind of that dip, when it's in front of the star. So each side, or the size of the depth of each dip, has to be exactly the same as the previous one. So there are no odd and even differences in those transit depths.
Right. Well explained, Nora. Okay, now where would you be to, now we've gone over vetting reports, we've done different reports and everything before. Where would citizen scientists go to determine whether it's odd even transits or if it's actually an exoplanet candidate?
Yeah, that's a good question. So they are in the DV reports from the automated pipeline. So the spot pipeline DV reports, they do this test. But for citizen scientists, if there isn't one of these reports, we can generate a very simple test to look at this. I would say this test is largely just based on inspection. So, or not largely, it's entirely just based on inspection. So you can also just look at the light curve, and if you see differences, then that will tell you that there are, that this is an eclipsing binary. So I should, just a very clarifying statement, if there are odd and even transit depths, then it has to be an eclipsing binary, then it cannot be a planet. So do look for those. We call the less deep one the secondary eclipse. So do look out for those secondary eclipses. Going back to how to determine this, you look at the light curve. I did put together a short notebook, Jupyter notebook, because we haven't done some coding in a while. So let's jump over to that.
We will be doing coding more in future episodes as well. We're going to go back to it. We haven't done it in a while, and it's the new year, so it's time to go back into coding, and I need to brush up on my coding. So I have to review our past episodes. If you haven't looked at our past episodes of coding, please, I implore you to go back and look, because I'll be doing the same. I need to brush up on it.
We should do a test on that, Cassie.
Fair enough.
Okay, cool. So this is a quick notebook that lets you, very briefly, it lets you plot the light curve and lets you plot the odd and the even transit depths and compare them by visually inspecting them. Again, small caveat on this. Of course, you can only do this if you have multiple transit events, and preferably you want multiple transit events of each the odd and the even transits. But we'll show an example of a case where we do have multiple transits. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So I'm not going to code live. I'm just going to talk through the code. Okay, so at the top here, we're defining the tick ID. This is the target that we want to look at, a randomly selected target. We're then using the light curve module that we have a couple of videos on how to use to download the data. We are doing this just for sector 4 here, but you can do this for other sectors that it's observed in. And of course, you have to always check what sectors it has been observed in before you can download the data for it. We're then here again, sorry, in this line, we're downloading it. And here we're just going to plot it using this command lc.plot to see what the light curve looks like. And what we have here is a very clear example of an eclipsing binary. We do have very obvious odd and even transits. So I chose an example where this is very obvious, but still we're going to run this test or the next part of this notebook, which again lets us just verify that and look at it in a slightly different way. All right, so in this box here, we have the code that does this odd and even transit kind of comparison. You don't have to worry about the code. We're going to just kind of scroll through it. You don't have to worry about this code. It hopefully does what we want it to do, and we just run it with one simple line. And that one simple line is just saying odd and underscore even underscore phase. So the reason why there is that word phase in there is because we're phase forwarding all the odd transits on top of each other, and we're phase forwarding all the even transits on top of each other. And by phase forwarding or phasing, all I mean is that we're putting them on top of each other. We are forwarding the transits on top of each other, building up that signal, and looking at them.
Yes.
All right.
I'm really glad that I remembered some of that stuff from our previous episodes, actually. It is sticking. It is sticking. It can be overwhelming looking at it, but it's starting to make a lot of sense. Even just going through Jupyter Notebook is really set up in a functional way, at least for me when I go through it.
Oh yeah, Jupyter Notebook is great. I use it for everything. Yeah. And I'm glad it's sticking. It's good. It's what we want.
Faithful. As soon as I saw that, I was like, face folding, keyword, buzzword, boom, boom, boom.
All right. So we run the code that we just saw above that I skipped through very quickly. We run that with this just one simple line. And the only thing we need to tell it the time of one of the transit events. So that's T0. And we need to tell it the orbital period. So we have covered both of these in previous episodes. You can either determine these values yourself, or you can look them up on, for example, ExoMask or ExoFop if you don't know them. All right, you just have to define them up here. You then run this code. I've given it some other, we call them arguments. These are just things that we tell the code to do. Plot size is the limit down here of the phase, so you can play around with that. And axis, same axis equals true, means we're plotting both the odd and the even transits on the same axis, which gives us a plot like the one that we have here. So we have the odd transits shown in blue, which is clearly much deeper than the even transits, which are shown in red. So I'm going to just very quickly show you what happens if we, for example, delete that last part, and then you get a plot that looks like this. So instead of having them on the same axis, you can just compare them side by side. So you can just pick and choose whichever one you prefer. Whichever way you prefer to look at it. And as a very brief example of the plot size, at the moment, our x-axis limit, so this is the phase, is up to 0.05, but instead we can have this up to 0.1, and it just changes the axis limit. So for different examples, you might have to play around with that. So the amount that you want on there depends on the orbital period of that system. So play around with that at your own leisure.
So looking at that, I know that scientists don't like to speak in 100% saying this is 100% true, but you are 99.9% positive then that this would be an eclipsing binary when you run it through this test. Is that correct?
It's absolutely not a planet.
Better way of putting it. Fair enough.
Could be another interesting. It could be a triple system, and we're just not seeing the third star.
But it's definitely not an exoplanet.
Yes, at least this signal is definitely not an exoplanet. Mm-hmm. Okay, I will very quickly show another example. So again, here we are just downloading chosen a random. I say random that way because it's not that random. I chose a random tick ID. We're downloading it for sector 34, and I have already defined the period and the T0 here, and then we can run this. And you can see it's quite difficult to see those transits. Now they are there, but they are quite difficult to see. So what we can do is, this is unbinned data. So again, binning is something that we have already talked about, but we can see these transits slightly better if we bin this data. So there's an argument that we can use, which I should say all the arguments are defined up here. It's called binning, and we can say we want to bin to 15 minutes. We can run that again, and we will
play the waiting game. There we go.
I don't know why that was so slow. And we can see the transit much better once it's binned. I would also say this will be easier to see if we have this as true instead of false, if we plot it on the same axes. And again, we wait.
It's the thinking game. There we go.
And in this case, you can see that those blue and the red, or the odd blue and the red, the odd and the even transits are the same depth as far as we can tell. Now, the reason I say as far as we can tell is because this is only a test that we can do, or if we're doing this test in this way, kind of by visual inspection, there is only with so much confidence that we can say something. So if we want to really determine whether the odd and the even transits are the same depth, we have to do a full model of these transits, which is unfortunately not something we're going to cover today. So what I'm trying to say is that there can be very small and subtle differences in the odd and the even transit depths. Like I said, for example, if you have stars that are very similar sizes or similar brightnesses, I should say. So this test that I'm showing you here can only be used to rule out the very obvious ones. But just because they look like they're the same depths, the odd and the even transits, doesn't mean that we can say that we're 100% sure that they're the same depths until we have absolutely modeled those using a full transit model. So that is, again, a small caveat on this test.
Excellent. Cool. Okay. Well, have a play, you guys. Have a play go through here. I hope that helped answer the citizen science question who submitted. Thank you very much for submitting your question. In particular, the citizen scientist submitted it on our YouTube channel, but you can always post it on social media. You can send us an email. You can tag us as well on Twitter. Not a problem. We love hearing from you guys. And again, you make this work. So as always, thank you very much for following us, for liking us, and for participating in this science journey with us. So Nora, thank you so much for going through and explaining that in depth. We hope that helps answer your questions. Have a play with Jupyter Notebook and go through it. And we'll be posting this on our website at the same time, planethunters.coffee, so that you can go ahead and just plug it in if you've already downloaded on Jupyter Notebook. Colab as well, Nora, or just, yeah, okay,
yeah, great. Okay, so.
Perfect. All right. Well, until next time, we will see you, and enjoy your coffee or tea or beverage of your choice, as always. We love to see you guys, and we love hearing from you. So thank you very much, Nora, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.